Hey, how's it going, people? Another video. So, in the previous video we looked at the fact that Avebury seems to be in the geographical centre of this map. Matthew Paris, writing in the 1200s, his unpolitically correct chronicles, hilarious chronicles. He just hated everyone who wasn't English, but very funny as well, you know. Basically he placed Avebury right in the middle, and he didn't know about Avebury. He didn't know about Stonehenge. Why would he do that? It's not his map, simple as that. And a couple of people in that video already, it's only got 300 views, but I'm making this other video, pointed out, well, why is London down there in the middle? It doesn't belong there, it should be more over there. So does this therefore depict Doggerland? And you know what? Perhaps it does. If London is there, yeah, something weird's going on, because we know that Avebury and Stonehenge are not geographically in the middle at all. They're towards the south, and they're also towards the east from London. They're about there. So what the heck is going on? I don't know what's going on. Someone suggested, could the fact that part of the island has sunk due to the rising sea levels, could that have skewed the map and skewed the coordinates? And could that be why this map makes no sense whatsoever geographically? It's skewed. Sometimes north is south, east is west, some things in the west. It's all wrong. What's going on? Is this a Beaker people map of England? Is this from, say, 3000 BC? It would seem so, possibly. It's possibly a Doggerland map of England made during the sinking. Look at those islands over there. What the heck are islands doing over there? Why is it skewed to the east? Why is Scotland skewed to the east, like on the Ptolemy maps? There are no islands there. But these are insulars. They're insular. What's going on there? That's not the Orkneys. He's written Orkney there, but he's tried to plot a modern geography onto an old map. That's what it seems going on. And he's tried to do that. But anyway, I'm going to firstly prove this map is older than Matthew Paris, because people are going to say, well, no, Matthew Paris wrote it. Well, look, no, it's official opinion that he didn't. So we're talking about this map here again, the same map, and British Library. What's known about Matthew Paris? He was a monk of St Albans, born in about 1200, died about 1258. He wrote the Chronica Majora. I recommend you read as much of it as you can. It's the most hilarious, one of the most hilarious. It's like Lord of the Rings style Britain. It's incredible. It's full of funny stories. For example, once he says King John tried to convert England to Islam. He hated the nobles so much. He sent an emissary to Mamilius, the admiral of Morocco. Admiral meant king in those parts, and he said, I'll convert them all to Islam, and we'll all, we'll live under you. You will be our king, and we'll have an alliance. What do you think? And the king said, why do the people allow such a tyrant to rule over them? I would never make an alliance with such a weak person. Get out of my sight. And the emissary said to him, well, speaking truthfully, you're right. He's a tyrant, and we hate him, and we're living like Pharaoh, like the Israelites under Pharaoh. And this is going on in the 1200s. So then King John said, I'll give it to the Pope instead. So he actually did. He gave it to the Pope in 1213. And that's what triggered Magna Carta in 1215. And if you look up Magna Carta on Wikipedia, no one knows this. But I'm a specialist in this area, so I'm telling you. But anyway, so about the map, why is the map strangely shaped? The map was drawn some 300 years before precise surveying was made possible by the invention of triangulation in the 16th century. Yes, of course. Followed by the development of more accurate surveying instruments of the Low Countries. Yes, of course. Given these limitations, Matthew Paris' map is remarkable. Well, it is. He must have drawn upon existing information gathered by travellers and possibly an earlier map based on a Roman model now lost. The Romans made the first strides in discovering the true shape of the British Isles. When he served as governor of... It's always the Romans. Only the Romans are smart enough to do this. No one else is smart enough to do this. Remember that. So why wouldn't the British do it? They're living there. It has to be the Romans who came from somewhere else. The Roman maps, they're not very good looking. But anyway, when he served as governor between 78 and 85 AD, Agricola sailed far enough north to locate the Orkney Islands in their proper place. The way in which Scotland veers to the east in Paris' map may suggest, now this is the Doggerland element, may suggest it owes something to the depiction of Britain by Ptolemy, the famous 2nd century geographer and astronomer. Ptolemy lived in Alexandria, where he produced, that is, where the library was. where he produced a 7-volume work on the geography of the known world around 150 AD. So his maps are, and this map might be, very old. He devotes a chapter called Albion, Island of Britannia to England, Wales and Scotland. Since travel was by sea, Ptolemy concentrates on listing prominent coastal features and river estuaries, naming each and giving its coordinates of latitude and longitude. He also notes the names of British tribes and their main settlements. None of Ptolemy's maps survive, but they can be reconstructed by plotting his coordinates. The first reconstructions were made at the end of the 15th century. His depiction of Scotland has a marked slant to the east. Matthew Paris' map also distorts the lower part of the country. This is the consequence of his using the main south-north route between Berwick and Dover as the backbone of the map. The road to Dover actually runs south-east from London, not due south as the map shows. All right? That's a clue. That shows he's not doing what he thinks he's doing. He's doing some older pattern. This straightening of the route forces the River Thames to open its estuary to the south coast and makes Essex rather than Kent the southeast corner of the country. So that's interesting. Now, it's official opinion that Matthew Paris' map is older than Matthew Paris. And that seems to be the case because why did he draw another map of... Let's compare. So let's compare, that's another one. So let's compare that map with that map, totally different. So that means, why would he draw a totally different map? It means, again, this is not his map. He copied it. All these chroniclers, what they did, they copied. And people say, well, the stuff in the medieval chronicles isn't contemporary with the ancient world. Look, it's basically copies of books from the ancient world. They didn't add that much original material. So let's analyse this map. It's really interesting. It basically says this part is Britannia, right? He calls it Britannia, and this part, he actually says nunc, now, and this is a shorthand for dicta, called Anglia, now called England. And he's almost drawn this central lee line as a border between Britain, and look, he's probably placed London right in the centre as if it's Avebury, but London's right there. And he says, so this is now called England, and this is Britannia. So in other words, this map is clearly older than Matthew Paris because the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were here. So this is a map from the Dark Ages. He's copied this out of a late antiquity. He's copied this out of maybe something from the year 600. So the English have taken this half up to the lee line, and the Britons are in this half up to the lee line. And over here, quite clearly, he's shown why it's called Warlia, because he's drawn a wall there. He's drawn in the dike. So he's made it very obvious why it's called Warlia, and scholars say, well, we don't know why it's called Warlia, but indeed it is a curious word, which is quite interesting. So there's the Snowdon banger, it seems to say banger there. Fascinating map, you can check that out as well. Does that say Merzia? I don't know, but Merzia is sort of in the middle. Does it keep going over there? Is this a map of Doggerland? It looks a bit weird. It really looks a bit weird, and there's so many rivers. And what's London doing all the way up there? The shape of England's more like this. It sort of goes around like that, and you've got all this extra land. And Paris doesn't know what to do with it. He's placing London right there. It's so weird. And so these could be reasons for the discontinuity between what the geography and what's placed on the map. Now, in the previous video, we talked about why is. Let's look at this map first. There's another map of Britain. And this map is just this. It's torn off. And he says something here about... I cannot translate this, but it says something about longitude here, and he's got some writing here. It seems to be a division between the British part and the English part. And he's drawn the wall. And this map is clickable and translatable, except for that bit there that I want, but it's hilarious. So if you actually look at, Wales, if you click Wales... let's see if that works. It's okay, Wales, Warlia, but Wales. So I mentioned that Matthew Paris is not politically correct. So I'll give you a taste of one of the things he says, and it's just a tiny sample. This guy is so over the top, you have no idea. But he says, he writes this on his map. In British a mountainous and half marshy land, he writes this about Wales, of busy and productive but bellicose men descended from the Trojan Brutus. So that's how he talks about everybody, except for the English. He loves the English, being English himself, but he talks about everyone in this way, and he puts the English on the top. And so that's a fascinating map you might like to check out. Just search for clickable map, and see this thing here that I said was the Isle of Ely. He calls it Eboracum, but Ely, Ebor, you see there can be a confusion. I mean, it shouldn't be there, should it? I mean, that's not the place to put York. So, yeah, there is confusion, and he's drawn some very old maps. This one actually shows, what is it, Firth of Forth for all this, or Loch Ness, or that could be the loch there. But it's so fascinating. Let's click a few things. Clydesdale, Strathern, and that bridge is the Stirling Bridge, or Estuarian Ponds. So anyway, so the last part of the video we're gonna talk about this map here, because I just wanted to show you this stuff. You know, you really deserve to know this stuff. Now, let's look at the good map of UK. Found it. There it is. So, the good map of UK, this is his best map of UK, which seems to stem from the ancient world, places the pyramid in the middle, Silbury Hill, the pyramid. And you got to ask, why is the pyramid placed in the middle? And does this remind us of something? Does it actually remind us of, say, what's happening at Giza? It used to be thought that the geographical centre of the land area of the world was Giza. The calculation was redone recently. It's actually Turkey. So they almost got it right. Or it's moved because the seas have risen and fallen. Or they had an accurate map of the world and they thought, we'll put this as a world ophthalmos, the Great Pyramid as a world ophthalmos. We mentioned in the previous video that Mr. Eddie Duke in the 19th century thought that along the Stonehenge Paris Lee line to the north, that Silbury Hill was essentially represented the Earth in a huge solar system, and all the other temples stemmed from that, with distances between which parallel the distances between planets and the sun along that Lee line. And it is known among all the geomanticists, the pyramidologists, etc., it is known, it is not up for dispute, that the pyramid represents the Earth, and in fact this opinion goes to ancient times. So we have the same culture, a centering culture in UK as we have in Egypt, and this obviously relates to what's happening with the idea of that I elucidated to of the Doggerland culture migrating towards Egypt. They have the same culture. They have a pyramid mound in the centre of their land. This is so fascinating. Now, in the last bit of this video, we're just going to talk a little bit about why this seems to have generated the map of Atlantis. If this was around in Roman times as it was, the ancient Greek, there was no dark ages between the Greeks and the Romans, the Greeks who made the Atlantis legend. So they found this legend in, say, Egypt, and they thought, well, let's find out about Atlantis. I want to find out. So they got their hands on a map, which might have been this map. And they said, well, this is very interesting. And I can point to features right now, which, I mean, this is it, you know, the mountain in the middle of Atlantis, Silbury Hill in the middle of this map right there. I can point to features. The Greeks wouldn't have had this map. They would have had a map that this was based upon, Matthew Paris copying this map. And I can point to features which can indicate that this very map generated the part of the Atlantis legend, or was added to the Atlantis legend. And I can prove that right now. So we're looking at this map. It's the plain of UK, and obviously the mountains in Scotland. It's a rectangular plain. It's separated by a bridge to the north, and you have a road going north-south. And in the middle, of course, there is either Old Sarum or Silbury Hill would be the mountain in the middle. And there's possibly the canal going to the coast. Now, let me look at the Atlantis legend. And yes, they say it's pseudo-historic and all this, it's in the Republic and all this, but, you know, what do we know compared to the people who wrote it? So let's have a look. Now, if I look up north, because apparently the Atlanteans they've put Doggerland in this article. Are you kidding me? That's very interesting. They talk about the Atlant and all this. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. It's definitely Doggerland. But if Doggerland sank, why would Matthew Paris's UK be a map? That's interesting. But what I wanted to show you was essentially this. So I mentioned in the previous video that it's about the size of England. But what it is, it's in one direction. So what it is they say it's larger than Asia, Libya, and Minor combined. Now let's dispense with that. It is well known that this is a mistranslation, and if you read it properly, it actually says it's sort of in between them. In addition, what was and it says there was a mud shoal there inhibiting travel to any part of the ocean. So we're talking about the Atlantic Ocean, which surrounds the landmass. So we know there was a mudslide, mud shoal. That's very interesting. There was a tsunami. But what we want to look at is this. Extending in one direction, so it's northern mountains and also mountains along the shore and encompassing a great plain in an oblong shape in the south. So what we have is the northern mountains of Scotland. We have the few mountains of Snowdonia there, and then a great oblong plain in the south. Were they looking at this map? And let's continue. So extending in one direction, 3,000 stadia, 555 kilometres, but across the centre, 2,000 stadia, 370 kilometres. Now that's not Asia and Libya Minor combined, so it's mixed up. Or that's a different legend which was inside the Atlantis legend, and this is another legend. So this is actually about the size of England, and it's about the right size of what we're showing on the map. So 3,000 north to south, and across the centre, 2,000. So in other words, three up on this plane and two across. It matches. It pretty much matches. I mean, that's pretty good. Up to Hadrian's Wall, 3, and then 2 across. Let's continue. There's more. In addition, Poseidon carved the mountain where his love dwelt into a palace and enclosed within it 3 circular moats of increasing width. See my old Sarum video. And what's in the middle is, as we pointed out, Sarum, right in the middle. It goes on. Varying from 1 to 3 stadia separated by rings of land proportional size. I've shown that Sarum matches. It matches. See my Atlantis found video. It says the Atlanteans built bridges northward from the mountain, making a route to the rest of the island. And that's very interesting indeed, because northward built bridges to the north, making a route to the rest of the island. Bridges to the north. There's a bridge in the north. Were they looking at this map, making a route to the rest of the island? Wow. And so I wanted to show you that. And they dug a great canal to the sea. Look, who else digs great canals? Look at Offa's Dyke. Who else digs great canals? And alongside the bridges and tunnels into the rings of rock so that ships could pass into the city around the mountain. This is the sacred mountain. Now there are 2 mountains. There's one in the middle, but there's also one near the coast apparently. So we're not sure what it's talking about, but we know that there was water, at least there was water around Silbury Hill, if that's the mountain, stemming off a river. We're going to show that in an upcoming video. So this is amazing, and they traded orichalcum, etc. They would have traded with America. This would have come from America. And there was part of the island which was pointing towards the Pillars of Hercules, and part of it was away from the Pillars of Hercules. You know, this seems to be, to me, the map which generated the Atlantis legend, and I believe that very strongly. Or I suspect that extremely strongly. What do you think? The rectangular plain under the mountains, that's it. And this might have changed. Yeah, I've gone on a bit in this video, but I really hope you've enjoyed it. And we've seen some more things. We've seen that this is the culture that went to Egypt. They were also in Britain, which gives evidence that this is the Doggerland culture which founded Egypt. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. So in this video, we're kind of going to be talking about Atlantis. And in the previous video, we talked about why this is an ophthalmos. We explained that. I recommend you watch that video. But it's not only in the centre of what was perceived to be the centre of Britain, but in the Greek legend we saw that it was 2 eagles flying around the earth, and where they crossed over was the centre of the earth, the ophthalmos, and that's where they placed a monument. Here, instead of eagles, it's actually two snakes coming together like that. This is the mouth. This is two snakes. They're eating each other in the middle, and they're two coming up. So they've come up from east to west, and they've met in the middle of the island like that, and they're copulating by mouth. That's how they thought they used to do it. To generate a new world in the middle of England and to give fertility for Britain forever. So if you dismantle Avebury, you're going to end its fertility, I suppose. So keep Avebury standing. And so if this is Atlantis, well, is this the centre of the island, or is, for example, Old Sarum the centre of the island? Old Sarum being this, and this could also be filled with water here in ancient times. There were springs here. And there's another ditch around that, a wider ditch around that. Are these the concentric rings? Is this what's left over? Did this generate the legend?